Scout of the Past. Hello, I am Sharunas, and you are watching the show Scout of the Past. Today I am in Ukraine. Behind me is the Dityatky checkpoint, the entrance to the Chernobyl zone. Today I am not traveling alone. I am joined by travelers from Lithuania. They will help me film the show. This time the episode will be slightly different. Now let's get to know everyone. Please, introduce yourselves.
Marius.
Ashasta.
Darius.
Jonas. Gediminas. Edgaras. Ir.
Evaldas.
All right, Evaldas, tell me, what do you know about the Chernobyl zone? We are currently standing at the gates of the zone and soon we will be allowed inside. This is my first official trip to the Chernobyl zone. What can you say about it? What do you know?
Oh, there is not so much I can say. Perhaps to protect.
The Chernobyl zone appeared after the explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which released a massive amount of radioactive elements. To prevent people from dying, they are simply not allowed here. The Chernobyl accident occurred in 1986 on the night between April 25th and 26th during an improperly planned experiment at the fourth block of the Chernobyl plant. The graphite rods that control the nuclear reaction were pulled out further than safety allowed. The heat deformed the control rods and it was no longer possible to reinsert them. At 1:23 a.m. local time, the chain reaction became uncontrollable. Several explosions occurred, blowing off the heavy 100-ton steel and concrete roof of the reactor. When the reactor core exploded, its entire radioactive content was thrown into the atmosphere. The wind carried radioactive dust across almost all of Europe. Larger pieces of nuclear fuel and graphite from the reactor scattered in the surrounding territories. Currently, the territory within a 30-kilometer radius around the exploded plant is fenced with barbed wire and strictly guarded. Gaining entry is difficult, but it attracts fans of exotic and post-apocalyptic worlds. We have arrived at the first and largest village in the zone, Zalissia. Now our guide, Evgenij, will tell us a bit more about this village.
I just wanted to show you what a typical abandoned village in the exclusion zone looks like. This is the village of Zalissya, the largest village in the exclusion zone. At the time of the accident, about 3,000 residents lived here. They were all evacuated after the accident in the first days of May, around May 4th. Now that the leaves have fallen, you can see that we are driving through a village. In the summer, for example, you can't see anything at all. You just drive through dense thicket on both sides of the road. Now you can see the houses buried in the overgrowth. Generally, all the villages in the exclusion zone look roughly the same now. It just so happened that the village of Zalissia, which literally means beyond the forest, is no longer beyond the forest, but has become the forest itself. All right, let's go. I'll show you some of the interesting streets in Zalissia. One plume of radiation went north through Belarus and the Scandinavian countries. A second, more concentrated one, went west. Consequently, this southern part was the least contaminated. That is why we are now about 2 kilometers from Chernobyl and about 20 kilometers from the power plant. Yet we see a normal radiation background on the dosimeter. However, if we were entering the zone from the western side, even 60 or 70 kilometers away, there is the so-called voluntary resettlement zone. That is a territory outside the Chernobyl zone, but it looks exactly the same. People were not forced to leave there, but the state offered them a choice. If you want, we will build you a house elsewhere at the state's expense, and you can move there. Some moved, some stayed, and some left, but later returned. It's a strange through-the-looking-glass situation because, officially, these settlements no longer exist as administrative units, but in reality, people live there.
Исключены из всех реестров именно как населенные пункты, как административные единицы, но по факту там живут люди. То есть какое-то странное зазеркалье.
Zalissia is the largest abandoned village in the entire Chernobyl zone. Before the accident, over 2,800 people lived here. Now, only one Samosel, self-settler, lives here, a person who returned to live here of his own free will. The village was a regional center, the hub of a collective farm. It had not only a school, a police station, a library, and a culture house, but even a maternity hospital. The village is situated at the beginning of the main road in the center of the Chernobyl zone. Everyone visiting passes through it. However, those traveling in the summer don't always notice the village because it is completely overgrown with trees and bushes. Only by looking closely can one see the houses nearest to the road. At 1:23 a.m., the Chernobyl plant's fire service received a report of a fire. A duty firefighting team left for the plant. Another team from the city of Pripyat arrived to help. Additional forces were called from Kiev and the nearest regions. The fire was assigned category number 3, the highest level of complexity. The firefighters were protected only by canvas clothing, gloves, and helmets. The gas and smoke protection teams wore gas masks, which they took off within the first few minutes due to the high temperature. The fire on the roof of the turbine hall was localized at 4 a.m. and extinguished by 6 a.m. In total, 69 workers and 14 pieces of equipment participated in extinguishing the fire. The high radiation level was only recorded at 3:30 a.m. because one of the available devices broke and the second was unreachable in the rubble. Therefore, during the first hours of the accident, the true radiation level inside and around the block was unknown. When the true consequences of the accident became clear, the Soviet government tried to hide the aftermath, and the cleanup operation was carried out with almost primitive means. The Soviet Union generally lacked the necessary equipment for such an operation, so liquidators used whatever they could find. The imported robots failed, so human power had to be used. Although workers were only allowed to work on the reactor roof for 3 minutes, that was often the time it took just to reach the work site. There were no special radiation-resistant suits, so people used standard chemical protection suits, respirators, and gas masks, additionally shielding themselves with lead plates. Coming up next. The Duga antenna, the largest antenna I have ever seen. Scout of the past. Chernobyl, the city after which the entire Chernobyl zone is named. It was first mentioned in documents in the year 1193. Historically, it was a Jewish town and one of the religious centers. Even now, Jewish pilgrimage delegations come here to visit important religious sites. It is mistakenly believed that the main and most affected city in the zone is Chernobyl. This is not true. Chernobyl is almost the cleanest place in the entire Chernobyl zone. Even now, quite a few people live here in shifts. There is a club, several shops, and a hotel for guests. The zone administration is established here. From here, a regular bus runs to Kiev several times a day. Chernobyl is within the 30-kilometer zone and is designated as the center of this zone. That is where the name Chernobyl zone comes from. All legally arriving tourists must first visit the zone administration, listen to a briefing, sign documents of the prescribed form, and only then can they continue their journey towards the center of the zone. From the very first days of the accident, mixtures of sand, lead, dolomite, and boron were poured into the reactor, which were meant to suppress the still smoldering nuclear reaction and protect the environment from the effects of killing radiation. Later, the work of cleaning the territory and burying the destroyed reactor began. The fourth block was encased in a concrete sarcophagus. After the decision was made to restart the first, second, and third blocks of the power plant, the debris and radioactive waste scattered across the plant territory and on the roof of the turbine hall were thrown into the sarcophagus or entombed in concrete. Construction of the sarcophagus began in July 1986 and was completed in November of the same year. During the construction, on October 2, 1986, a Mi-8 helicopter crashed over the fourth block after getting caught on a construction crane's cable. The crew of 4 people died. We listened to the safety briefing in the town of Chernobyl, and here is our first object to visit. The Duga antenna, the largest antenna I have ever had to see. The total length is almost 1 kilometer. The height of this part of the antenna standing behind me is 150 meters. On a previous trip, I had climbed to the top. True, that trip was illegal. In a legal trip, they don't allow you to climb to the top. December 11th, 1976. An article appeared on the front page of the Daily Mail newspaper about a mysterious radio signal from the territory of the Soviet Union. The signal was so powerful that it not only blocked radio communications and interfered with television and radio broadcasts, but it was even heard in wired telephones in the United States of America. The signal was heard across the entire planet. Experts determined that the signal was coming from the territory of the Soviet Union. Due to its characteristic tapping sound, the signal was given the name the Russian Woodpecker. The world speculated that this might be a new Soviet psychotropic weapon meant to control the subconscious, but no one knew the truth.
The Defense Department explanation of the Woodpecker is that it is an over-the-horizon radar designed to track U.S. missile launches. Some scientists suspect that the Woodpecker is designed to interfere with human brain function.
The signal range within which the Woodpecker operates is that which has been reported by many investigators to produce a tranquilizing effect upon animals.
The Soviet Union, without any doubt, denied everything at that time. Only much later, in 1988, foreign experts determined that it was a ground-based ionospheric radar with a capacity of 10 million watts, designed to protect the territory of the Soviet Union from ballistic missiles. It was sensitive enough that in 1986, it detected the disaster of the U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger less than a minute after the explosion, from a distance of over 9,000 kilometers. This was as much as foreign experts were allowed to find out. Darius, what do you know about this antenna? What can you tell the viewers?
As far as I know, this antenna was meant to catch those U.S. radio waves. A whole radio station, from what I know.
Okay, another version. Jonas, what do you know about this antenna?
Like he said, the material, all that iron was brought here from Belarus. That's about it.
All right, let's ask further. Edgaras, I see you smiling. What do you know about this antenna? What will you tell the viewers?
I know it was one of the most interesting objects in Ukraine at the time. Intended for spying on the USA by ionizing the atmosphere and waiting for some kind of response.
Tokiu būdu, kaip jis buvo ionizuodavo sferą ir laukdavo kažkokio atsako iš to, bet...
Something like that. Actually, this structure is gigantic. There are two antennas. The length of the first antenna is 300 meters and the height is 100 meters. The height of this large antenna is 150 meters and the length is 500 meters. The total length of this entire construction is almost a kilometer. And as you see, we aren't very lucky with the weather today. It's rainy and cloudy and the tops of the antennas are already in the clouds. We don't even really see the very top. In 1946, constructor Kabanov proposed an effective long-range airspace monitoring system for distances up to 3,000 kilometers. In 1949, the first model of the locator system was assembled, which successfully detected rockets launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome over 2,500 kilometers away. The purpose of the system was to detect missiles launched from the USA as early as possible, so that the missile bases established in the west of the Soviet Union, in the Baltics, could prepare for a counter-strike. The first series of signals began broadcasting on July 4, 1976. Video clip. In this video clip filmed by internet users, it is shown how powerful the radio signal is in its surroundings. A blade of ordinary grass touched to the antennas of the high-power radio transmitter can literally play music or simply burn up. The Duga Radar could induce strong interference in the power plant's internal systems. That is, fire, accident, and all sorts of other alarms, local communications, the automation system. In that place, there could have been an impact where the controlling electronics receive incorrect signals. Perhaps the operators at that time saw completely different information than what they were used to seeing. Perhaps they were performing an experiment at that time on how to increase the plant's power. And while increasing the power, they didn't see any malfunction signals, even though those malfunctions could have been occurring. And that interfering signal, which distorted the sensor readings at the power plant, was caused by the operation of that radar. Such a scenario is entirely possible. After the accident, the transmitter located near the city of Lübeck was mothballed, and a year later, in 1987, the decision was made to close it. It is believed that after the explosion of the fourth block of the power plant, the radio location system lost its electricity supply, without which it could not operate. According to official sources, from 1998 to 2005, the antennas located in the village of Lübeck were dismantled. After the accident, the civilian residents of the military town Chernobyl 2 were evacuated, along with everyone else who was in the accident zone. The military personnel settled in supposedly protected premises. In July 1986, the object was decontaminated from radiation. However, the ventilation system again pulled in radioactive dust. Then, a chemical decontamination brigade, arriving from a military unit in what was then Leningrad, washed the entire town for 3 days. They dug up the soil, but the radiation quickly returned. There were plans to build a military town near Slavutich and transport the personnel, just like they did for the power plant. In 1986 to 1987, the base personnel themselves tried to decontaminate the premises multiple times, but it was all in vain. After the accident, the radio location station was never restarted. On the morning of April 26, 2006, the base commander Vladimir Musiets ordered the base to be closed. Some of the equipment was taken away and destroyed by the military personnel themselves. Some was collected by so-called stalkers and sold on the black market. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment, click subscribe, and be the first to see our latest journeys. And of course, don't forget to support Ukraine. Scout of the past. Now we are at the fourth block of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Our guide will show us one hot piece, an element ejected from the reactor, which is particularly radioactive. Scout of the past.